Alright, welcome to lesson 6 in this series of how to draw. This particular video is dealing with how to draw a shark, but what you want to do if you can is watch the first video in this series, which goes over the terminology and techniques in much greater detail that will allow you to follow along as I go through this video on how to draw a shark. So this is the 6th video in this series. Be sure to check out the other videos. So let's get started. Alright, as I always do, I've printed out the reference photo in such a size where it's not going to be too big, it's not too small. It's manageable. You want to print it out in a size that you're going to be able to finish it and still be able to see the detail. So this is like, I don't know, 4 inches by 3 inches, something like that. So I'm picking this point. The other thing is the photo is very close to where I'm starting the drawing. So I'm starting the drawing without having to move my eyes very far. So extremely important. You don't want to have your reference photo be a couple of feet away or you having to look up and down constantly. So it's right beside me. I'm moving my eyes back and forth, and picking this certain area that I'm going to start out with the corner of his mouth. So I'm going to connect these 2 points here. And I'm essentially going to spend quite a bit of time on this first line. So this first decision of a measurement. And that is really because this is essentially the foundation for the rest of the drawing. So if you spend enough time on this first line, you'll be able to use it as a reference point, one in the length and one in the angle, for some of the other lengths that you choose to draw in the rest of the drawing. So I've drawn out the lower jaw, and what I noticed is that first line that I drew, corner of his mouth, seems to represent, if I multiplied that by 2, I would get that length of that lower jaw. So it seems to be that length times 2, and you've got that lower jaw area. So this is one thing you can do later in the drawing, or throughout, I should say, is use certain decisions that you've made to be able to decide if the rest of your drawing is as accurate as possible. So that particular length makes up, I guess, multiplied by 2, you've got the lower jaw. So fleshing out the rest of the mouth area. In this particular photo, there's always some sort of area of each reference photo where it's a little bit more difficult than, say, another area. And this is definitely that spot, which is the teeth, mouth of the shark. So you want to really spend a lot more time on this area. And an idea I've got is to take the reference photo, blow it up, and print it out, cropped, of course, to that problem area of the teeth. So you've got this now second reference of this much larger version of this detailed area. But you're going to, of course, keep that, keep looking, I should say, over at the original reference photo so that you're able to maintain the scale of the drawing. So filling in the detail of the teeth there, this was a little bit more difficult than I assumed. So it really might be a good idea for this particular area and maybe the area of the eyeball to blow that up and print it out and be able to see details that you might not be able to see with the scale that I've got this photo in currently, which is like roughly 4 inches by 3 inches. So I'm going to flesh out the rest of his nose area. And it's got this, classic triangle look that a lot of sharks have. Not every shark, but great whites and tiger sharks will have this triangular look to their nose, and yet when you're really looking at it, there's a lot more of a subtle detail in this triangular look, and you're trying to mimic that over in your drawing. So there's quite a bit of curvature going on, but it could be a situation where you start off with a basic triangle, and then you're really changing it up, maybe erasing certain areas and trying to make it look more realistically as far as the curvature of his nose. So you've got this area here in his nose where I'm spending a little bit of time on it, but I'm not going to spend as much time on this area as, say, I did the teeth or the eyeball in the future, because it's just not as important. Your eye is naturally drawn to the teeth, in a photo of a shark, or the eyeball. So spending this time trying to get that glazed out, crazy look that sharks usually have in their eyes, spending a little bit more time on these problem areas can really enhance your drawing. So I've got this measurement. I'm trying to figure out, or earlier I was, as to where that eye sits with this head of the shark. And what you can do is use the teeth in this case for a reference point, like what particular teeth in his mouth are directly underneath that eyeball. So this is just another way of referencing, and then, is this similar in your drawing as it is in the photo? Another thing you can use is like that first line that I did in the corner of his mouth. How is this relating to where that eyeball is? Is it, over too far to the right? Is your eyeball potentially floating left? Has it wandered over a little too far, in which case you really need to get out the eraser? Is it floating up, towards the top right? Which in reality is still going to look like a shark, but it's just not going to have as much accuracy, and someone would be able to identify it as a shark, but they're potentially going to see something wrong with it. So as far as these little details are concerned, the more time you spend on them, the greater accuracy, and ultimately the better your drawing will end up being. I'm trying to fill in the value system of the shark here, as far as trying to decide where these lights and dark areas are starting and stopping. And one technique that I've talked over in the past is blurring your vision on purpose. So I've blurred my vision, or the reference photo on the left there. And what this does is your brain can really start to see the reference photo in a completely different way. You've got these obvious areas of light and dark where you're not seeing it as a shark anymore, because your vision is blurred and you're seeing it more in shapes, basic shapes and lines. And in this case, you've got these real kind of distinctive three shapes of value. Light, and then it's more of a darker gray, and then a lot darker gray as you get towards the top of the shark's head. So blurring your vision is a little strange at first, but you're squinting, you're getting your eyelashes in front of your eyes, purposely blurring your vision. Like here, you're able to see that line of where the dark shading and the shark's head starts and then goes upward to flesh out the rest of his head. So continuing to fill in some texture here and there. You've got quite a bit of texture in the skin of the shark, and I've done a little bit of stippling and just trying to, I guess, get that accurate, more realistic look, rather than just, basically shading the shark, give it a little bit more character. And then another thing you can do to really set that shark in the ocean is to black out that background, doing sort of like an old style crosshatch there, and trying to fill in now a little bit more texture in the skin, trying to get that value system a little bit more accurate. And there you have it, 6th video in the series. Be sure and watch that first video, because it'll really go over in much greater detail the techniques that will show you that you really can draw realistically if you put enough time and attention and effort into it. And not only that, with the techniques of being able to use your own drawing as a reference point, and measuring in general to be able to accurately depict whatever it is that you're drawing. So thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the next video in this series.